And now, live from the studios of Freedom's Phoenix, Ernest Hancock.
Welcome back to Declare Your Independence with me, Ernest Hancock, here in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, where we're on the farm here at Freedom's Phoenix Studios. You know, and we're talking to Michele Naar-Obed. Go ahead and help me out, Michele. How do you pronounce your name? I want to make sure I get that right.
You said it perfectly.
Michele Naar-Obed with www.cpt.org. Now, this is the Christian Peacemaker Teams. Now, they're out there just, advocating for what I would imagine is the truth. They just want to get out. She's been very open about making sure that we understand what's going on. And I tell you, you ended with talking about the Kurdish people having an international voice. Once you had no-fly zones imposed by the U.S. Air Force or whomever, and they say, nope, you can't just go indiscriminately just bombing these people. But at the same time, the United States or the Clinton administration, we're cruise missiling and bombing Iraq on a regular basis just because we can. We were taking out infrastructure, destroying factories and baby formula making and all kinds of whatever stuff on a regular basis to show them who be in charge. And I'm wondering, during the 90s, who was advocating that they were in charge of the Kurds? I don't see if it was really Iraq or certainly not from the air. So now we have the second Gulf War comes in, or the Iraq War. We go in. We're saying, we definitely in charge now. Just want send you the memo on a cruise missile. And then you have the Kurds are starting to, stretch their chest out a little bit and saying, we're trying to be autonomous. So I just want to know, where are we at? Who's the boss there? Is there... I'm for having no boss. I mean, if I'm a Kurd and saying, hey, man, I rule me, I'm happy with that. But how is the government evolving, and where do you see it going?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that anybody really knows who rules here. Again, when the no-fly zone was set up, it was set up as protection against Saddam's army against the Kurds. They were still under the genocidal attacks by Saddam. This happened. So they had the Iraqi military had an air force at that time, and they were bombing from above, and they had ground soldiers that had come up into the Kurdish region. So that no-fly zone was set up as a protection from the Kurds from Saddam, not from what eventually became the U.S. war or the coalition war against Iraq and Saddam. And they used the excuse at when the U.S. could no longer justify the weapons of mass destruction angle to come into Iraq to occupy it. They eventually moved on to Saddam the dictator and Saddam who gassed his own people. That was true. He did gas his own people because at that time the Kurds were forced to be part of the country of Iraq, even though they never felt like they were part of that country. They never felt like this was their country. So the semi-autonomous region that's set up was an attempt for them to have some sense of self-determination and identity. And I have to say, if there's any Kurds listening to this afternoon on this program, I know I'm not doing a very good justice of explaining the history of the Kurdish population here in Iraq, because it's long, it's deep, it's complicated, it's complex, it's beautiful, and it offers so much to humanity, all in one, all mixed in one. So please forgive me if I'm not representing the Kurdish history in full, because I don't think I ever could. Anyhow, so aside from that, here we are in 2003. And Saddam is finally gone in terms of how the Kurds see this, and they are trying hard to develop further into from semi-autonomy into full autonomy. They would love to be their own country at some point and have their right to self-determination. And whether that will ever come about, history, time will tell. In the meantime, here in this part of Iraq, there's the second, I think it's the second largest oil well in Kirkuk, which is an area that they call the disputed zone. It's neither part of Iraq's central government nor is it part of the Kurdistan regional government. It's in this place, this zone called the disputed zone, along with a couple of other provinces. It's kind of in the same situation. So the Kurds, of course, would like to have Kirkuk back in the KRG. At one point, it was a Kurdish-run city, and during Saddam's time, there was the Arabization process where Kurds were forced out of Kirkuk and Arabs were put into Kirkuk, so that the demographics would have a higher representation of Arabs. When the Ba'ath Party fell, the Kurds who came from Kirkuk tried to go back to Kirkuk, tried to take back their homes, their property, and some of the Arabs left and went back to their original homes, and some stayed. And so they tried to pass a referendum so that they could vote on who actually will own the city. Will it be part of the KRG or will it be part of the Iraq central government? And the referendum has been sitting for, I think, a couple of years now, and nobody seems to be able to get this passed because it's a very complicated thing. If they get it passed and they get it into the KRG, that gives them an economic boost that makes it more likely that they can become an independent state.
Michele, I got to ask you this one question. If you have some type of a referendum or you have some kind of a vote and it says we're going to vote whether this becomes this part of this government or it remains part of this government, well, who enforces it? Who's counting the votes? Who's actually doing the paper? Who's going to say we win and then the other side goes okay? I mean, how would that even work?
Again, a very good question, because it's this region, and well, actually all of Iraq is still very much manipulated by the United States, who for some reason seems to just not want the Kurdish region to become fully autonomous and to be its own state. They are doing everything they can to manipulate. It seems to me, by ways different things that have gone down, different policies, different statements that have been made, that the United States would like to see the Kurdish North and the Iraq central government be one country, and the best that they are willing to say is that it can become federalized, so that like the North is federalized, it's separate, semi-autonomous, but still part of the federal government. And then the South, like in Basra area, that's another federalized area. And then the central part is another federalized area.
It's just how they want to rule from Washington, D.C. over the United States, over the states. They want to unite them under one rule. I understand this, but they're trying to do the same thing in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, you have all these tribes, all these different people. They never considered themselves in this Western creation of a country called Afghanistan. They're like, we have different languages and cultures and this, and they can't get a national soccer team or football team put together because they don't think that way. And it's this Western imposition of this concept of you're under some flag, and you don't have a flag. Well, you don't get to have your own country. Got to have a flag. Got to have a little meeting table that we can go in and sit at. You got to have, all this totally different cultural concept of how they should run themselves. But right now, you're starting to have, we're coming up on the break, and I want to make sure, certainly in the next break, that we bring it up to, there are, demonstrations coming on. People are starting to rise up against the man, whoever in the heck the man is. I don't even know if they know or even care. They just don't want to be ruled by someone else. Well, that's what's going on. And when we come back with Michele, we're going to find out live from Iraq. We'll be right back here on Declare Your Independence from Freedom's Phoenix in just a little bit.